Out of all of the restaurant chains within the United States and abroad, it goes without saying that the Waffle House has one of the worst reputations of any of them. The idea that the Waffle House tends to be the scene of many crimes is actually a meme in itself. But is there any truth to these memes? Well, yes, there is. So far on this channel, I've talked about crimes revolving around McDonald's miscreants and Chuck E. Cheese drunkards, but there's one popular topic that I neglected to cover: Waffle House. When talking about those other places, people in the comment section overwhelmingly wanted a video on this topic. That's pretty understandable, as Waffle House has kinda gotten the reputation as being one of the scummy, seediest restaurant chains throughout the United States. It wasn't always this way, but after many major headlining crimes over the past few years, it's gotten that reputation. Personally, I haven't actually eaten at Waffle House before. The one time that I did go in, there was vomit all over the floor by the bar-style seating, and the only person working there told me, "Sorry, we'll get to that in a bit." That kinda ruined my appetite, so I just kinda walked out and I went to Denny's instead, and I've been a Denny's guy ever since. As a result of that, I can't vouch for the atmosphere too much, but luckily we have a long list of articles willing to help us learn about the place. Let's start with one of the classics. This takes us back to the far-off year of 2007, when none other than Kid Rock got into a Waffle House brawl in Georgia. When a man named Harlan Atkins approached a female member of Kid Rock's entourage and attempted to speak with her, Kid lashed out and attacked him. While Kid still claims that he only verbally abused the man, not physically, he was still arrested on charges of assault only about 1 hour later. Harlan then took Kid Rock to court, initially wanting $6,000 in medical fees and another unspecified amount for punitive damages. While the punitive damages weren't awarded, the judge actually ended up awarding him $40,000 in other damages. Kid Rock was only held responsible for about 15% of that amount, as it was found that his guitarist threw the first punch. His personal assistant and executive assistant were also forced to pay a certain percentage for throwing punches themselves. Still, Kid Rock claimed that he never hit the guy. "I gave it to him verbally. I said, 'Shut your mouth, man,'" he claims. The victim said that he was only talking to the woman in the group about some text messages she had sent him. He said, "I still don't even know what I did say to him to start this jumping on me," while admitting that both he and Kid Rock were very drunk when the incident happened. Kid Rock's lawyers insisted that this was merely a ploy to get money out of a celebrity. In the end, Kid Rock was sentenced to a year of probation in order to pay a $1,000 fine as well. While this was the first widely publicized case involving Waffle House, it wouldn't be the last, and it definitely wouldn't be the worst. For the next several years throughout the 2000s and 2010s, a large number of brutal, strange crimes would continue to happen regularly at the establishment. For example, in August of 2011 in Panama City, a man named Charles Patrick O'Brien was very angry with his wife. He decided to take his emotions out on her in one of the most unhinged and unpredictable ways possible. As his wife, Danielle Gibbons, was enjoying a meal at the Waffle House, he watched her through the window from his truck. Unable to control himself, he stomped on the pedal and rammed his truck through the window of the Waffle House and accelerated straight towards his wife until the vehicle got stuck. He hopped out of the truck, knife in hand, and went to finish his wife off. This was when a customer was able to grab a big chunk of metal from the wreckage and thwack Charles over the head with it, ending his rampage. His wife had suffered injuries from the crash, but they weren't life-threatening. She was rushed to the hospital, and it seems that she made a full recovery. Charles was arrested on charges of attempted murder and felony criminal mischief. While this crime was a good mixture of vicious and goofy, many later crimes would lean more heavily into the vicious side of things. At a Waffle House in South Carolina in January of 2012, a few teenage boys decided to hop in and rob the place. Rushing into the restaurant at about 1 a.m., they pulled out weapons, threatened cashiers, and demanded cash. They didn't get too far, as one customer in the restaurant who had a concealed carry permit was packing. He pulled out his gun and demanded that the two robbers stay put until the police arrive. One of the robbers, though, aimed his gun at him. So he fired, hitting one of the boys, 18-year-old Dante Lamont Williams, and killing him. He died there on the scene before the police arrived. The other robber, 29-year-old Kenneth Joan Craig, panicked and fled the scene. He was arrested later that night and charged with both armed robbery and possession of a weapon during a violent crime. He was thrown into the Spartanburg County Jail. The guy who shot at the robbers wasn't charged with any sort of crime, as there were plenty of witnesses that could clarify that he shot in self-defense during a crime. In 2018, we had what is probably the most well-known and most well-documented case involving a Waffle House. This is due to what a man named Travis Reinking would come to commit in a Waffle House located in the Antioch neighborhood of Nashville, Tennessee. Travis was nothing less than a strange young man. He was known for being a bit of an eccentric, to put it lightly, suffering from paranoia, getting into petty crimes, and being absolutely obsessed with Taylor Swift to the point of delusion. In fact, he had told his co-workers that he had plans to marry Taylor Swift, saying that not only had they met, but they were also engaged. They didn't really believe him, especially considering that he had told them he was gay during the same episode of Word Vomit. At one point in 2016, his delusions got so bad that he felt that Taylor Swift was stalking him and hacking into his phone. He fled to a drugstore in a paranoia-induced haze, forcing his parents to chase him down and call the police. When the police arrived, they said, "Travis is hostile toward police and does not recognize police authority. Travis also possesses several firearms." 1 year later, Travis was living in an apartment above his dad's business in Illinois. He had been working with his father but had since quit, feeling that the police were stalking him there. He also felt that his fated chance to marry Taylor Swift was soon approaching and he couldn't miss it. One day his father was forced to call the police once again when Travis came downstairs into his business wearing nothing but a pink dress, carrying a rifle, cursing all the way to his car. On another occasion, the police were called when he went to a swimming pool in a similar pink women's coat and flashed the lifeguards. A few months later, actual Secret Service agents had to arrest Travis when he made his way out to Washington, D.C. and attempted to break into the White House. He was there saying he had an important meeting with the president. It appeared that he had fallen into the sovereign citizen conspiracy theories online and felt he needed to discuss it all with the government. He was charged with unlawful entry and forced to perform 32 hours of community service for this incident. He was also forbidden from visiting the White House ever again. It was after this incident that the Illinois police finally revoked his firearms license and seized 4 of his weapons: a Remington rifle, a .22 caliber rifle, a handgun, and an AR-15. Travis's father asked if he could keep the guns himself, and they agreed as long as he promised he would keep them secure and away from his son. However, he gave them back to his son after a begging session one night. Travis then moved out to Nashville in late 2017, working as a crane operator and construction worker. However, he was fired in April of 2018 for once again claiming that he was being stalked, this time by the other employees who work there. He then stole a BMW from a dealership. He was quickly caught by the police, given that the car had GPS tracking and they found the key fob in his apartment shortly after arriving to ask him some questions. Travis had hit rock bottom. Just a few days after being fired, he hopped into his truck completely naked aside from a jacket, holding his AR-15. He drove over to a Waffle House in the Antioch neighborhood and sat in his truck for about 4 minutes before coming out. Nearly nude, he moved toward the Waffle House with his rifle. He shot 2 people standing outside, killing them both before moving into the restaurant. There he continued to fire his gun, killing 1 more person and injuring a 4th. Another customer, 29-year-old James Shaw Jr., got grazed by a bullet. He hid near the restrooms before lunging out and wrestling the gun away from Travis, ending the rampage. Travis, defeated, ran out of the restaurant completely nude, leaving his jacket behind. The 4th victim, who had been injured, later passed away at the hospital from their injuries. Travis had left no sort of manifesto, notes, or communications. The police had very little to go on when it came to a motive. They began to hunt him down, warning the public that he was armed and dangerous, having owned more guns than just the rifle he had abandoned. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation added him to their list of most wanted criminals and offered a hefty reward for his arrest. Travis was tracked down and captured the next day after he was seen entering the woods near the Waffle House. He was carrying a backpack with his handgun and some more ammo. He was charged with 4 counts of criminal homicide, 4 counts of attempted homicide, and 1 count of having a firearm while committing a dangerous felony. He was given a mental exam and found to have severe schizophrenia. He was deemed incompetent to stand trial and sent to a mental hospital for treatment. By October, though, he was deemed competent to stand trial once and for all. He was facing life in prison without parole. When the trial came in 2022, he pled not guilty to 16 counts of murder and assault with a deadly weapon. However, he quickly changed his mind, changing his plea from not guilty to guilty by reason of insanity. This was unsuccessful, and he was found guilty on all counts, including 4 counts of premeditated murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. His father, Jeffrey Reinking, was later hit with the charge of unlawful delivery of a firearm for illegally returning the guns to his son and hit with an 18-month prison sentence himself. In the same year as Travis's sentencing, another shooting would happen to take place at a Waffle House in the very same state. In 2022 in Clarksville, a 28-year-old man named Mark Austin Ellis, known on the street as Bubba Raichi, was out on bond after being indicted on a charge of first-degree murder. He had shot a mother in her car while her 2 kids were in the back seat. He was charged with first-degree murder, attempted murder, reckless endangerment, and weapons charges. He decided that 1 charge of murder simply wasn't enough. After seemingly getting into an argument with a few other people outside of a Waffle House, the Fort Campbell Boulevard location, one Sunday morning, he decided that there would be no better way to end the argument than by pulling out a gun and shooting all of them. He then sprayed bullets inside the restaurant as well. The police were called out to the restaurant to find broken glass and petrified customers all over the place. 3 people outside of the restaurant had been injured from their gunshots, 1 critically, and were taken to the hospital. Several other people inside were hurt by the shattered glass. Local residents, when interviewed by the media, expressed that they weren't at all surprised. After all, crime had been escalating for years, and nothing really shocked them anymore. One woman said, "It wasn't really shocking to me, just more upsetting. I think it's just really scary, and it makes me nervous as a parent, and it seems to be that crime is getting worse in Clarksville. I've lived here for 7 years, and it just seems like there's escalating violence in this town." Others, while not really shocked at the violence, found the choice of location to be odd.
At the Waffle House? You got me don't want to go eat no more.
It wasn't long before the police tracked down Bubba Raichi. Getting an arrest warrant, they took him in and found that he had a firearm on his person, despite being a felon, along with a felony amount of narcotics. Now he's facing an additional 2 charges of being a felon in possession of a firearm, along with possession for resale, simple possession/casual exchange, and unlawful drug paraphernalia. He was convicted after a 2-day trial of conspiracy to distribute and possession with intent to distribute more than 400 grams of fentanyl, also being a convicted felon in possession of a firearm and possession of a firearm in furtherance of a drug trafficking crime. Things would go quiet for a little bit until 2024. 2024 would prove to be a very explosive year for Waffle House, as several very high-profile, very violent crimes would come to take place throughout the year. Early on in the year, February of 2024, a woman named Crystal Kennebrew, a pub owner from Gary, Indiana, was visiting the town of Indianapolis for the weekend. She attended the party and went to a club while the city hosted the NBA All-Stars game events. Late one night at 12:30 a.m., she was eating at a Waffle House when an altercation took place between her group and one other, although the details are fuzzy. Well, the opposing group decided to pull out their guns and start shooting. By the time the police got to the scene, there were 5 people lying on the ground with bullet wounds. In the end, Crystal was the only one to pass away. The other victims, 3 men and 1 woman, were sent to the hospital and soon recovered. While there were a lot of people in the restaurant when the shooting had occurred, the majority of them had run out of the restaurant and fled. The police were left with very little witnesses to work with. In this case, it seems that the police are still investigating, and as of the making of this video, they haven't made any arrests. It isn't clear if they even have any suspects, as they are still asking for people with any information to come forward. We'll just have to see where this one goes. Then April 2024 was a particularly bad time for the Waffle House, with 2 high-profile shootings occurring within a very close time frame. One of these incidents took place at a Waffle House near Ohio State University early one morning at about 2:30 a.m. A huge fight broke out at the restaurant, resulting in a huge brawl between 15 to 20 people. The fight spilled outside the restaurant and into the street, ultimately concluding when shots were fired. 38-year-old Ronald Diggs was shot. Once the authorities arrived, he was taken out to the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center, but it was already too late. He was pronounced dead not even an hour after the fight began. 2 more people had been injured in the fight that were taken to the hospital. The Columbus Division of Police went on to release the photos of 3 people they suspected to be involved in the shooting. So far, 19-year-old Jaquan Curry has been taken in and arrested. This is still an ongoing investigation, and the remaining suspects haven't been found. On April 21st, another shooting occurred at the Waffle House on Wards Road in Lynchburg early Sunday morning at around 3 a.m. Like the previous case, the police were called out to deal with a large-scale fight that broke out between multiple parties that ended up resulting in a shooting. When the fight ended, someone stood outside the restaurant and fired multiple bullets into the building through the windows, hitting both a 74-year-old security guard and a 30-year-old man. When the police arrived on the scene, they applied all the aid that they could to the 2 victims. Medics soon arrived and took them to the Lynchburg General Hospital. Not too long after, video footage of the fight was uploaded to social media and passed around, being shared a large number of times. The 30-year-old male victim was soon deemed to be in stable condition. The 74-year-old security guard, Rosalinde Belt, also survived, although she was shot multiple times and required surgery. Some of this surgery was to her neck and face area. The suspects were known to have fled the scene in a black Nissan sedan. Knowing the car, it wasn't too long before the police were able to track down at least one of them. At 5 p.m., they noticed one of the men they believed to be involved getting into his car. This man was named Omarion Daquan Fitch, and he didn't feel like getting arrested. He led the cops on a chase before crashing his car at an intersection. He didn't give up there, though, taking off on foot. In the end, he couldn't escape. He was caught and hit with a whole load of charges: aggravated malicious wounding, reckless handling of a firearm, shooting into an occupied building, property damage, use of a firearm during the commission of a felony, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, and discharging a firearm within the city limit. Soon after, the police found his cohort, 22-year-old Shanisha Kalish Turpin, and charged her with accessory after the fact, felony eluding police, and obstruction of justice. When it all comes down to it, there really isn't anything about Waffle House itself that leads itself to be such a breeding ground for these incidents aside from one thing. They tend to be open all night and during any situation, even hurricanes, and they're pretty cheap. That means that, when the bars close and people have nowhere else to go, they tend to flock to these places in order to sober up. Having that many drunk people in one place is just a recipe for disaster on its own. This is only made worse by the fact that the more criminal types crawling the streets at night also have nowhere else to hang out, leading to them showing up as well. You could really replace the Waffle House with any other restaurant, and the end result would be pretty much the same if you cultivated this sort of environment. While searching for Waffle House crimes, the results are practically endless. It's likely that you can even find a crime that has occurred within just days or even hours of your search. Discretion is advised when getting some waffles. Once again, thank you for watching my video. If you found it interesting, please give it a like, it really helps me out in the algorithm, and hey, feel free to subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Just recently, by popular demand, I've got my own merch store. Be sure to check that out in the description if you want to give it a look. I've also started up a podcast with 4 of my friends called the NBR Podcast. If you like this channel, I think you'll like that one too. Go ahead and follow me on social media if you want, as if anything were to ever happen to this channel, that would probably be the only way you'd ever hear about it. I also really appreciate when people follow me on Patreon. There you can get videos early, ad-free, and uncensored. Channel memberships are back up too, and you get the same benefits there as well. Once again, this has been your host Kyle. Thank you, and good night.